I realized after a while, this is just the work experience part. This has nothing to do with the language. I realized that what people who make decisions value is actually your idea and not so much, the grammar. The grammar, yes, is like less important. But if you are able to deliver in very eloquent and fluent and what is even more important, like culturally correct way, let's call it that way, then it's even more persuasive.
An enormous welcome to the Power Talks. Firstly, thank you for being here. Thank you for pressing play. Thank you for giving me your time from my heart. It's really, really lovely to have you here. So this is my new podcast, my first podcast, and we are going to examine what it is that prevents women from being able to access and express their personal power, especially women who speak English as their second language or their third or their fourth, right? As that is absolutely, definitely an extra barrier. So I have some amazing guests in this series and I cannot wait to introduce you to them. Okay, episode 8. This one's very exciting for me because Marijana is a very good friend of mine. It's Marijana Markoska. She's from Belgrade. She lives in Belgrade, which is in Serbia. That's where she was born. That's where she was raised. That's where she was educated. She got her PhD in digital arts. She is an award-winning graphic designer. She's produced several solo art exhibitions, also corporate exhibitions and music videos. She's done numerous visibility campaigns too. So she works now as a graphic designer for the European Commission. So besides visual arts, she is a huge fan of popular culture, especially rock music and film. And she says that she's constantly in a state of flux between the demands of the market and her own completely non-commercial art projects. Now, as I said, we're friends, and so we both hopelessly believe in freedom and equality. That's what binds us. So we talk about how to manage the stress that can come with speaking in English, becoming more comfortable in English, and how the belief in what you are doing will always be more important than your grammar. We talk about how much the environment impacts our experience and influences the way that we are seen and the way that we are heard. And then we talk about different ways to fight against hostile environments, against environments that aren't inclusive. Marijana explains to us about Serbia and its socialist past and the options that women had during that time. It's really interesting. And then the conversation gets very philosophical because ultimately that is what underpins the human experience, no? That's what we're all sitting on top of. So we talk about value systems and love, really, and then being able to imagine, actually spend some time visualizing, clearly seeing what a better world could and would look like, and then how do we actively work towards creating it. We also talk about culture and how that can be a portal to language acquisition. That's how we finish the conversation. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. It was the first interview that I ever did. I asked Marijana, I had this idea, I want to do a podcast, and I asked Marijana if she would be my first guest. And so she was the first woman that I interviewed. And I think you'll be able to see because I was quite nervous, but hopefully it's still really enjoyable. Okay, have fun. So, firstly, Marijana, thank you. Thanks for coming on.
Most welcome.
And doing it. I appreciate it a lot. Right? It's very cool. So I'm going to I'll jump straight in. I mean, but I want to ask you mostly about communicating and how you do that. How you do that in a professional environment, and how speaking English as your second language affects the way that you communicate, if it does.
Yes. Well, first of all, I think the activity, this is in a group of business activities. So it's somewhere where we predominantly use our brain. So we are alert. in these situations, and that would be the same in Serbian or English. However, I feel more alert in English because it's not I'm not a native speaker.
Yeah, right.
So,
okay. So you have to be thinking in a sharper way.
Yes, which I'm doing now too.
Yes, yeah.
And that is a situation that is a bit stressful, always a little bit stressful.
Okay.
However, it gets better with practice, like anything else.
So and that stressful thing, how do you manage that? Okay.
It's actually after a while of using English, you realize that this is not translation per se.
Okay.
It's actually a different mindset. It's a different mindset, and I've been surrounded privately with people who don't come from the Serbian culture. So eventually, over time, I learned to think differently. So it's actually from the start thinking in English, and by being surrounded by it a lot, helped me to live this mindset. So I don't translate it in my mind. I become a part of it. Which is not only the language thing, but it's also the mindset and the cultural identification. As if I enter all of a sudden in like a sea and I start swimming. So it's not air around me, it's the sea, it's something different. Like I'm in another country or something like that. Maybe that would be like closest description.
Think that's an amazing, I think you've identified an amazing and powerful and important aspect of language acquisition, is that you have to become a different person and can't be comfortable as that person when you're speaking in the language, right?
Yes,
because it's identity. It's identity, I think. What did you? Sorry.
Comfortable is the key. Comfortable is actually the key. Because it happened to me to travel to the States, for instance, several times. And it took me really a while to understand what is going on around me. It's not only the language, it's the different cultural difference between me and all these other people. And as soon as I relaxed finally and understood what was happening around me, I started using the language in a much better way, I think. I think that's crucial.
Identifying with it, as well. So in a professional setting, you've never had moments where you have felt like unheard because of being a non-native speaker, or like, and I know that most of your work has been, most of it until the work with the European Commission, the majority of it was in Serbian, right?
Yes, but it was in tourism, so with a lot of people from around the world, so I had to use my English. Even then.
And then in those, like, defending ideas or defending what you're putting forward, like any artistic creations that you're putting forward, have you always felt heard and seen and kind of accepted by the environments where you were delivering your work?
Yeah, well, there's two things there. First is I realized after a while, this is just the work experience part. This has nothing to do with the language. I realized that what people who make decisions value is actually your idea and not so much, the grammar. The grammar, yes, is like less important. But if you are able to deliver in very eloquent and fluent, and what is even more important, like culturally correct way, let's call it that way, then it's even more persuasive.
I know with you, there's a conscientiousness to you that would, and yeah, extreme professionalism, that means that when you talk about the work that you do, I imagine that you can do it with conviction, and that's the thing that transmits ultimately. I believe when you are in a room with people and you have to be able to convince them of something, if you can do it from a place of absolute conviction, that will always be so much more powerful than whether or not your grammar is correct. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But there is also another thing, is also like it depends who you're talking to. So I realized early on, by having experience with a lot of people, I was really involved with a lot of people in my career. And the more progressive they are in their thinking, they're more open to your opinion. So whoever is there just for the profits, let's put it like in a simple way, they're like a little bit harder to persuade. And the others believe in teamwork, and they believe that everybody is there who is an expert in their own area are going to contribute to the project. So they are open to suggestions if they are, of course, professional. So it's actually an open circle of people and ideas. And that's something that I always aimed at, to become a part of that kind of team,
that kind of environment. Where people are respect. I mean, I think that's for me, that's completely the point. Like where the ideal situation, the ideal environment is where people are respected for their knowledge and their expertise, and that is what they're being judged on. Judged is not the best word, but that's what they're being. That's what they're there for, right? They're not there for, can they do the second conditional correctly? You know,
exactly.
It's much more. But I think you're very fortunate to have found yourself in that environment, because I think that in a lot of environments, professional environments, there is still some layers of that. You know, there's a judgment on who in the room can have a voice and who can't, or who has to fight to be heard and who doesn't have to fight to be heard. You know, who will be automatically listened to and who will need to prove themselves in some way.
Well, I am lucky at the moment, but it wasn't always the case. I had that experience of being a passive listener, or not heard at all, a number of times, because the environment is fluid, it changes. And even though I was in a very good position that I was interested in, and my career was something very important to me always, so I found this job that I was very happy with. However, the environment changed over time, and the management wasn't open to my ideas, or stopped having this confidence that I am a valuable member of the team. So I felt unheard for a while and unseen. And I know how that feels, and that is really not, it's really not fun. And so whoever has this problem, there is a huge problem in professional or private life. Like when we are unseen or invisible, there is something that we have to fight. We have to find our new position and explore our options. And maybe it's language. You never know. Maybe you're just not good enough in the language. Maybe you are the problem, but usually it's the environment that doesn't have a lot of faith in you, or they just simply don't need you, or the whole system changed. So like you are actually great and you're an expert, but you just have to leave because they're not interested in your expertise.
Yes. Yeah.
Something else. So a lot of bad things can happen.
Yeah, no, sure. And then I think that you've hit on something quite important there for me in the way that I work and what I do with people, is that it is being able to recognize, okay, this environment is hostile. It's not me. It's not my lack. It's not that I've not got enough of something. It's, in some cases, sure, of course, yes. And in some cases, we do need to develop skills or hone abilities, whatever. But it is being able to discern the difference between, okay, yes, I need to develop something in myself. I need to work harder on this and develop it. Or what I'm dealing with here is a hostile environment. And actually, I maybe need to leave, and trust myself enough to know that I can get a job somewhere else. I can get work somewhere else. Or I will go in here and start having difficult conversations and challenge people because maybe they're being hostile towards me in an unconscious way. They're not realizing why. And maybe it might be worth trying to have that conversation. But I think there needs to be a level of training for that. And that's possibly a whole other conversation. I mean, like I work mostly with women, and what I've seen repeatedly from clients of mine who are high-performing, incredibly professional women, incredible women that have a lot to offer, that they have been shut down in moments of their career, and not given the space or the respect that they really deserve. Yes. And I find that the way that affects how they communicate or how we communicate, because I am also a woman that has been at times shut down. That's what I'm interested in exploring now. Like, how do we overcome either things that limit us personally, or how do we start to try and challenge certain environments, right? Because we're in these places, we're in these positions now. A lot of women are in these positions where they could say, okay, this environment's not so great. What are we going to do? And how do we start having those conversations, But,
yeah, there's so many things to say about all these issues, and they're really not simple. I've worked in female hostile environments, but it's definitely a cliche, unfortunately, that women get hurt more in business environments. I didn't work in these very typical corporate environments such as banks with common nominees or lawyers. Yes. That's I think a cliche, unfortunately, that I think men still are dominant there. However, I worked in some areas that are more like, I think, female driven somehow, like tourism, for instance.
Yes.
And now I think there's an equal number of men and women. And I work for the European Commission, but this is bureaucracy that is highly aware of all the human rights. So I not only don't have to worry about it, but projects that I work on are promoting this idea of equality.
Yeah.
So I feel very lucky actually not so lucky. I aimed to get there.
Yes,
So
yeah,
this
that was
is very
intention.
important for
Intentional
me
action.
from the beginning of my career.
Mm.
And I felt how lucky I was. Okay, here I am now in this state company. There is the tourism board of Serbia, and all the management, most were women. So that was just luck, pure luck, and I didn't have to deal with all these issues. But I was told by my colleagues who were there for a longer time that the previous that they had issues with the previous management, for instance. So which I didn't witness. I wasn't a part of that, but I absolutely believe them. It's a very specific country because it has a socialist past. So Serbia was a member of Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and the values that I grew up on in that country were so much different. So women and men were treated, well, I don't think there's a perfect system, but I definitely am sure that they were treated more equally. The generation of women like my mom, they were basically all employed. And my mom even finished college when she was in her 40s because she always wanted to do that. Amazing. And as a young person, she didn't have a chance, but eventually she did it. Not to mention that the education was a part of the social system, so nobody had to pay for it. Yeah. So that's one of the things that was not the issue. However, even in those circumstances, that was just a little tiny part of the history, because globally, like in the 20th century and before, the society is still patriarchal. So absolutely, yeah. No. There are some aspects of it. They're patriarchal and conservative, but the options after the Second World War were much significantly higher for all the women to be emancipated. That was absolutely a dominant way of female lifestyle. I don't think there were women who were frustrated in that way or didn't have any options in their life. I think the only reason why they would be frustrated, for instance, if their marriage was bad, like really bad, they needed a divorce, I think it's not the social issues that would bother them. It's more like patriarchy. I think they didn't get divorced not because they weren't socially protected, but the patriarchy prevented them from doing so, because the society is still conservative. Yes. But if they wanted to, they had options. They had health insurance. They could get a job. They could get some social help. Yeah. There were options for that. Yeah. So that's interesting. That's an interesting circumstance of a different system in which things were just different. It's just an idea for thinking. Serbia was an isolated country in the 90s. So I was very young then. And I'm very young now, Marijana. That's true. Super young. So I was a baby. So since we were isolated, we couldn't get enough information about different cultures. However, working in tourism in the early 2000s, I traveled a lot more than my generation here. So I had this really amazing opportunity to get to know different cultures all over the world. And I realized then, that was my impression, and it still is, that especially the Western cultures were even worse when it comes to this inequality of men and women, because because Yugoslav women were had absolutely the chance to educate themselves. So whoever wanted to educate themselves could
have access
that
to.
was number one. So number two, you had access to any kind of culture that you want. You can, if you're a super poor person, a worker in a factory, you can theoretically go to an opera if you're interested. So it's all there. It's up to you to educate yourself. And that created a huge class of women that were just going to work every day. All the moms of my friends had a job all their life. I don't know any housewife, literally no housewife in Belgrade where I grew up. Or
really
maybe a few somewhere outside of Belgrade or in rural areas. But normally that was like a standard life for a Yugoslav woman is to have a job. Okay, in the Communist Party, probably male dominant, in all the institutions, probably management male dominant, but still a lot of women, a lot of, like for instance, in all the scientific institutions that I know, and I have a lot of scientist friends, they say the number is equal, even female dominant. Usually in education and science, a lot of women there, a lot of women. That's interesting.
Okay, I'm jumping in here because I expressed to Mariana in a very, very long way something that I'm going to make shorter for you now. So even when we have seen examples of more equal societies, fairer societies, they've still been rooted in patriarchal values, right? So even like voices of women in the public sphere, right? They've not been trusted, they've not been valued, they've not been looked to for expertise, knowledge or authority, they've not been taken seriously in any real way. And I wonder, what has that done to all of us? I wonder how that has affected the way that we feel about using our voices to contribute from a really, really honest place, no? I think about how does it affect the way that we might challenge what we don't want, or to make requests, or to make demands for what we do want?
It's absolutely crucial that we base our values, that we base our society on different values. And the values
I agree.
have to be money and power.
I agree.
Because that is that principle requires overpower. It requires aggression. It requires
dominance, control, force.
Control.
So I'm going to jump in here too. I didn't say this in the interview, but I thought about it afterwards. And this is exactly why we need to redefine what power is collectively and intentionally redefine it so that we stop associating power with dominance and control, which we all do. It's automatic in us. But, but we need to start seeing power as something that is regenerative, right? And
so I don't want to get too spiritual about this, but
get spiritual, Mariana. Let's go. I don't mind.
Let's go. So, but definitely a society based on, usually they call it in modern politics, they call it solidarity. But I don't like that word so much. I think that it's more completely described with the word love between people. And
bell hooks.
Yes.
And
it's just a really huge set of opposite values that first of all we need to start to believe in. It's not something that we just write on a piece of paper. We need to be able to imagine this utopia.
There's a radical shift.
That's utopia. But let's try to picture it in our minds. What would that world look like? What would it feel like? How are we going to be able to create it? What should change?
Yeah.
And we are all going to feel blissful and happier.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm so happy that that's the direction we've just gone. I'm really happy. Because I've worked for years with women who speak English as their second language, right? And I've been repeatedly told by these women, okay, listen, my English is not enough. My English is not enough. And after such a long time of hearing that from really high-performing, incredible women, right? Not women that their English was fine, probably better than mine in some cases because of our different educations, right?
Yeah.
And I just started to understand. I reached this point where I understood. No. We are all standing on these remnants or the foundations of a system that has marginalized anyone that didn't look and sound like the traditional idea of power. It's built on dominance and control. This whole thing is working against us, no? And you can't, until you can kind of look at that. Two things. One, you have to be able to look at that before you can start going, hang on a minute. This is not the fact that I'm inadequate in my communication skills or my language skills, or no, there's a lot more. It's a lot more complicated than that. It's way deeper than my English. It's way deeper than me being a woman, even, really. And then the second part, and this is the part that I love, because you said it there yourself, co-creation. How do we actually go, right, do you know what? We're in the room now. Women are in the room now. They're in these positions where they potentially could have influence. And also, I don't want to exclude men in this. Men also are much more. There are so many more men who are not willing to live in this anymore. No, they're not. They don't want to have. They're not the kind of men that fit this model, and they don't want to play this game because it's just been a game. No, it's been a performance. And I think it's people are coming around. Okay, enough of this performance. How do we now work with what's here, right? And shift it, change it, co-create something new that is built on different pillars. No?
Yeah.
And
I think that's a very good question.
Yeah.
I believe that it should be a combination of a couple of things. One is talking about feminism or equality. And the other is actually what does this actually mean? It's this utopia that I was talking about. For now, it's utopia. Things are never going to be perfect. We kind of, all mature people know that. But it's important to imagine a different future for yourself and for everybody else.
Everybody, that's the point. Yeah.
And something better is going to happen.
Yes, this podcast is for people who speak English as their second language, right? However, as we just discovered, that goes way deeper than acquiring a language. It's much deeper than that. But I do want to think that is my audience. I'm thinking I'm pretty sure that is my audience. So people that are speaking English as their second language and are wanting to find ways to get better at expressing themselves authentically, honestly, powerfully, with authority. What would be just to finish things up, I think we will finish things up, what would be your number one piece of advice for like a younger person? It doesn't even need to be a younger person. It can be any age person, really, that might be having difficulties with that, with being able to communicate effectively, skillfully in English. What would be your number one piece of advice?
We are all biased in a way. So my area is art and culture. So I would always vote for that. Get to know the culture.
Yeah.
Like English culture, UK culture, American culture, the English speaking language
Yeah.
culture.
Okay.
And there's a lot there. There's
Yeah.
really a lot there.
Yeah.
And I think that would definitely be my advice.
Oh, do you know what?
Because
I wasn't expecting that. Go on, tell me. Sorry.
of course, reading, watching movies, that would be the way for me. I mean, that was something that was available to me. So I did that way. Some people can maybe travel and learn about the culture in a better way.
So that's brilliant. I think that's excellent. It's good advice. I also have a horrible feeling sometimes that there's a certain type of like neo-colonialism happening, no? And I think culture is a really good portal into a language, sure. But I also think that can put some people off. That can make people more. It can have a negative effect on people, no? That they if they don't have a natural interest in, because I know you love music and I know you love kind of art and literature and films, but for people that don't have that love of punk.
Oh, no. This is me. I didn't say it precisely enough. So I do love music and I do love cinema.
Yeah.
But the second past of the 20th century for cinema and music was very fruitful in terms of the values I believe in. So a lot of counterculture that happened is something that didn't happen in a lot of other countries in the world. So I believe that English-speaking countries are a place where a lot of important things happened, which is like actually the recent history of popular culture. When I say culture, I don't mean you have to read Shakespeare. You know, that's not what I meant.
I think everybody should read Shakespeare. No, I'm joking.
So, you don't have to know the facts, but information about the culture. That is not the point. I think the point is to try to absorb all these very powerful messages that we got from that culture that was very progressive in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And I think those were the good times when it comes to counterculture, to be more precise. And a lot of things, among other things about colonialism, were said in those pieces of art. So decolonize and moisturize. That was my advice. I saw it on a t-shirt. I loved it very much.
That's perfect. Right. I think that's there. I think we'll end it there.
So what did you think? I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I also hope that if English is your second language or your third or your fourth, I really hope that this inspired you to be more vocal in English. You know, the world really needs you. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate having you here. I think these conversations deserve to have as much visibility as possible, and you can really help with that by liking and subscribing. This is that moment. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much. And I'm sending you all a big power-filled hug. I hope you can feel that.